to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the unit story Snakeheads, written by Jonathan Clement. This is the second story in the first season of the unit series. Now this would be the last story that we are going to tackle, mainly because I don't have the next two stories. Personally, I just couldn't get into the series, and I don't know. There's a lot of other stuff that I wanted to tackle, so I decided maybe abruptly to end the series here for me anyway. Maybe I'll carry on it later in the future. Who knows? This is the least connected story in the series, as I've stated in previous videos. The unit, the first season of Unit anyway, are connected under over an umbrella of storylines regarding the evil organization ISIS, but not related in any way to the real-world terrorist organization ISIS, but rather a British organization which was supposed to replace Unit, only for them to basically being discovered as villains in a sense. But this story does not revolve around the ISIS group. Sure, they get mentioned, and sure, they might have one or two scenes here and there, but the main story is completely separated from the rest of the series. And for that, I think by far this is the best story so far in the Unit saga. It's its own little thing, its own little connection. It has its own story, its own little plot line with some nice little twists and turns. And I would actually consider this a good story. I just wish that we had a much more interesting cast. I don't know who is. I think it was just maybe a lack of communication, or maybe it just didn't sit well with me. If you're a fan of the Unit series, please let me know. I really want to hear somebody who's a fan of this series and give off their opinions. Maybe it wasn't connecting with me. Maybe it connected with you. Who knows? But yeah, that's all really I can talk about to kick off the video. So here's the official Big Finish CD cover. As I've stated before, the first season all have similar covers with only the text and the colour change, and this one is the blue story. The blue story. Ooh. Again, I was never too keen on these covers. It's actually one of the few cases in which Big Finish hired an outside company, I believe they're called Red Ink, to actually design the covers. And as I've stated in the last Unit story, it introduces the new Unit logo, which would actually be used in the 2005 New Who series. These audio dramas came out in 2004, for anybody wondering. And like always, I made my own DVD cover, which I actually put together myself. I even put the Unit logo there. Now, I have listened to this story before making this cover, but it was like years prior, and I kind of completely forgot what the plot was about, so I kind of looked it up online. So the cover doesn't actually represent the story very well. I mean, on this side it actually works pretty well, but with the vampire like that, no, it doesn't seem to appear like that in the story, which I'll explain when we talk about the story. And there's the spine, if anyone's interested. The spine looks really good. I was really proud of coming up with that. And here's the back, if anyone is interested in that. I keep saying that, and I know nobody's interested in the covers of my own DVDs, but, you know, it's my series. If you don't like it, you could just skip to the actual review. It's not really a review, it's a vlog, but anyway, I'm rambling. So, the story has Unit investigating all of these. I'm trying to think now. There's like those are these dead bodies that are appearing on the shore, and what they find is, I think it's like loads of like coffins or something. When they open them up inside, there's this weird thing that's going on. There's just a bunch thousands upon thousands of cockles. Very strange. And so Unit is coming to investigate. Like I said, this has nothing to do with the overall plot of the Unit Season 1 story arc. So this is a nice little plot. And I really like the mystery of this. Our two main characters, Colonel Emily and Colonel Robert Dalton, they go into investigate, and they first meet up with this archaeologist there who's been like examining the beach and trying to find the body of a Saxon king, an old Saxon king, and they're trying to find like all the buried treasures and stuff. And this character is a really fun little character. He's a bit silly, he's a bit quirky in a sense, and I really like his dialogue interplay with the rest of the cast. Very good stuff. We got him basically talking to Dalton. It's like, Dalton, that's an old Saxon name. Wait, you're not from around here? And he goes into detail about that. He also helps plot the story forward as he gives off details which he believes are little stories to keep, like, children awake at night and stuff like that. But it turns out are actually real, and Unit are interested in what he says in case they are real. And Unit then, the Unit crew, then they go to a nearby restaurant where they just have food, and they're trying to talk about all of this supernatural stuff. Now Emily, she is a believer in a way, and she basically is like, right, this investigation is supernatural. We as Unit have got to investigate until we find, unless there's a real world explanation that we can find, then it's our property. Whereas Dalton, he's more of a skeptic. He looks into the situation and it's like, sure it's messed up. The bodies appearing on the beach with these massive like chunks of their bodies disappearing, and these loads of the cockles just seem to randomly appear with them. But it could easily be done by human or natural phenomenon, maybe like a shark attacked them or something like that. And he doesn't believe, to begin with, that this is a Unit matter. And despite I don't think the characters having much more anything interesting to really say apart from this little dynamic, this dynamic is actually an interesting thing. We got the skeptic versus the believer. It is kind of hindered on the fact that because it's a Doctor Who story, of course it's real in a sense, but the story does some nice twists and turns with the idea that keeps it nice and interesting. For example, we discover that there's this guy that seems to be related to the situation. They've discovered that nearby, Emily discovers it's like, right, cockles are a rare like food that loads of restaurants sell, and you can have two types of cockles, legal and illegal. And she believes that this whole conspiracy can also be linked with people illegally trying to get these particular food source into the country. And she tracks down trying to look for any businesses of black market cockles. In fact, they meet up with a character who they know is part of like the black market, but they want to keep him like as an insurance. So they're like, right, we can basically get rid of your history from the police. You just tell us what we need to know. And so they find out that there's this van, and they've been smuggling people. Well, I say people, what I mean is person, one individual, a man, to come into this country. And Unit track him down. Dalton investigates this man, and originally just thinks he's just some sort of immigrant that's trying to get into this country illegally. And And when he starts talking about him being a vampire killer, a vampire hunter, then Dalton's like, oh, come on, give me a break. You can't tell me that vampires are real. So this story kind of deals with vampires, but not the ones that we Europeans know as a vampire. This is I'm trying to think, a southeastern version of the mythology in which vampires are actually invisible creatures which murder and sexually assault women, and sometimes it impregnates them with a child that is half human, half these kind of vampires. And these half vampires, shall we say, have the ability to see other vampires. And this vampire hunter tells that he is the son of one of these creatures, and so he goes around murdering them and killing them through all of the world. And basically he gets hired, people pay him a lot of money to go around fighting these invisible vampires, and he's tracked some down to into London, into the UK anyway. And so Unit get involved, and they suspect one of the character they were talking to find out this information, basically explains that he once saw somebody get murdered by an invisible creature, and that and he explains what he sees and stuff, which will become very important later on, which will be a very interesting dynamic. And Emily goes to talk to the archaeologist who knows about these vampire things. He doesn't believe him to begin with, and he basically explains to Emily about the mythology of these creatures, and that he clearly doesn't believe them. Visible vampires, clearly it's a story. It's a nice little story to keep kids scared at night and stuff like that. And when he explains about how they kill their victims, and he says, I've never seen anybody murdered like that. Does Emily then show him the photos of the dead people, and the two stories then interconnect. This is the vampires. So Dalton gets his night vision glasses on, teams up with the vampire hunter on the beach, and because Unit have no recollection of this particular form of vampire, we don't know how they work. So Dalton's wearing these night vision goggles, hoping that these creatures will give off some sort of heat, in the vain hopes that they will fight and catch one, until one of them does appear, or at least the vampire slayer claims, and so he starts wrestling with him. But Dalton can't see anything. Now Emily and the archaeologists are actually far away on the other side of the beach. Not too far that the other characters can't see, but they're far away enough that they can't really interact with one another apart from on telephone. Emily's also with the guy that told them all about these invisible vampires. And Dalton, he can't see anything on his night vision glasses, and he starts wondering where the hell is he going to shoot. He can't see anything whilst this vampire slayer is basically fighting with the air. And this vampire slayer suddenly is he shouts at Dalton to fire over there. He's running away, and Dalton's I can't see anything. And then the person before who was talking about the vampires is aim for the feet. They show footprints. You should be able to see the footprints. You should be able to fire at the floor. And Dalton explains that he can't see any footprints. There's nothing moving in the sand. To which the other guy is that can't be. They clearly show footprints. I saw them. When I first saw them, they had footprints. And it clicks. The vampire slayer is a liar. He's a fraud. He's somebody who pretends to fight vampires and gets off with the money that people pay for him. So that was a nice little twist, and it showed, especially connecting him with Dalton at this time, is a very great, aspect into the narrative. And so the story then, you think it's like, right, okay, so these vampires aren't real. And Dalton starts shouting and screaming. It's like, I've been out here in the freezing cold, whereas you've been in there enjoying nice coffee and stuff. And then he is like, Emily's like, stop shouting, people might come and visit. It's like, so what? There's somebody coming towards you, and you're not complaining about keeping an eye on them. And Emily's like, you're joking, stop being ridiculous, and she turns her communication off. Until they realise there isn't anyone else on the beach. Dalton can see something on the heat vision that the unit soldiers on the other side of the beach cannot. The vampires are real, and they've come to slay anybody involved. So sadly, people get murdered near this. I can't remember if the archaeologist or the guy who was connected to this like immigration thing, which one of them gets killed, but one of them gets killed. And Emily actually gets trapped in the camper van with the invisible creature, and she's basically told to stay still without any movement, and she can hear this kind of, I don't know what language it is. It doesn't say on the back again. I'm not very good at remembering things. Thank you for noting. She hears like somebody speaking a different language. There's this whole thing about these creatures speaking a different language. In fact, at the start of the story, someone gets a phone call where somebody is like screaming like at the other side, like a police telephone number, but it's like in a different language. And when they translate it, it's actually like a prayer to keep away bad evils. And that's how they kind of get involved in this story, in a sense. And so Dalton then fires, killing the invisible vampire, and the body does actually disappear, leaving no evidence that any of this ever happened. And the story ends with the police actually arriving on the beach, and Dalton and Emily making a bet on whether their unit passes will let them get off this situation scot-free. So there you go, that's Unit Snakehead. Overall, I think it's an okay story. It's not going to stick with you for a while, but comparing it to the last two stories, it's easily the best of the Unit series. Emily and Dalton do have some interesting things today about skeptics and believers, even if that's only the real interesting thing about this story in terms of our main characters. We have some fun side characters like the archaeologist, the guy who brings in the immigrations and is connected to the illegal cockle industry, the vampire slayer that turns out to be a massive fraud, and the villains are kind of interesting, though, and they do play into the fact it's like, are these real or are these not? It's a great villain to have in a story about whether the supernatural exists or not. So, very interesting stuff. And if you're interested in what I have to say about the story, I say actually check the story out. You can listen to it on its own. There's no heavy connection with the other stories. But I do think it helps if you do listen to the other stories, as the main characters don't have really much of a personality, and sticking with the series from beginning to here allows you as an audience to at least get some sort of gravitas towards them, I suppose. I don't know. Weren't too keen on the series myself, and like I said, I dropped it after this. But I might pick it up later in the future, and I'll talk about those stories if I ever do pick it up. But for right now, I'm going to give the rest of the series a skip. So there you go, that's Snakehead. So join me next time as the 7th Doctor encounters a new foe. So join me next time for the harvest of the Sycorax. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!